I don't really know how to start this. I'll just
We could
say,
just start. Let's just do it.
let's just do it. Okay. All right. Well, thanks for being on the call with me.
Thank you.
I have Hugo Martin here, director of Doom Eternal, and I have a list of questions that go across Doom and other games, and just some general Hugo questions. And I don't want to. I don't want to make this like another big like tag two interview because I feel like it's been talked about to death. You've done a great job at being really open with the community on the Bethesda stream and
Hmm.
going to other Doom YouTube channels and their streams and stuff like that. So that's been really cool. I recommend people check out those streams. And Tyler McVicker has a really good interview with you. And so I want to move on to some other stuff and I want to have some fun here.
Okay.
So my first question is, after let's say after Tag Two came out and you did those streams and everything, did you just need to take a few days to just not think about Doom and decompress? And if you did, like, how do you relax? How do you clear your head?
I'm not saying this to be funny. I never stop thinking about Doom personally. I don't really take breaks. I do take breaks. I mean, it's not like, oh, I'm just leaving. I don't want to paint a picture of myself like that. Or it's creatively speaking, I think it's important to we kind of have a saying in the office. You sort of walk around with it. I always say, like, I might say something to a designer or someone, or Marty and I will have a conversation, and we'll sort of tell each other to just kind of like see how it ages. And
Mm.
usually, ideas need to incubate, and they either you know grow legs and become something, or honestly, they just kind of like, you'll wake up the next day and you'll be like, yeah, it's not that cool. There's a newness to an idea that'll make it sound really appealing, when you first think of it, because it's like the shiny new idea. But then you'll find that over time, not all ideas kind of age very well. So as a result, I'm pretty much, even if I'm fishing, hanging out with my kids, doing anything, and Josh can tell you, like, it's round the clock. Because it is for Josh too. Like, we'll often have random Doom thoughts, like really late, because I'm just always thinking about it and always watching. I'm sure the PR team love that so much, but like, it is something that's pretty much a not so much a job as it is a lifestyle. But don't feel sorry for me or any of us. I mean, this is a dream job by all accounts. So it's my passion, like, so. Um, I don't really consider it work at all. To be honest.
I was gonna add a little thing onto that question and say, or are you the kind of guy, as you strike me, who never stops thinking about what he's working on? And so
Never. It
that's
really,
what I thought.
honestly, not kidding. 24/7. But again, it's a passion. So I'm not complaining.
Okay.
And by the way, I don't know that I'm special in that regard. Like, I'm pretty sure that that would be the answer that most people would
I think
give.
a lot of hardworking and creative focused people are probably like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's a question I've really wanted to ask about Doom Eternal for a while, because you mentioned that when you were making Doom Eternal and you started experimenting with the meat hook and dash, and you were seeing how the 2016 AI couldn't really keep up, and you started building the game, and you said that, I don't know if it was in the first or second year of Eternal's development, you said that you like went into Marty or someone and you were like, "Hey, I'm not having fun. Something's not right." And I wanted to ask, when changing course during the development like that, what were the first pieces to come into place that made you feel like you were starting to go in the right direction?
Uh, it was the enemies weren't making me earn anything, and so as a result, I didn't have to do anything. Like, everything worked, and that made the game just flat and boring. And so once we started holding the player accountable in any way, every time we did that, it felt better. So initially, it was taking away, just literally reducing the falters by 90%. Like, in the
Okay.
beginning, they faltered for everything. Like you shot them with the shotgun, they heavy faltered. You shot them with the, that whole faltering system that you've picked up on and dived into, which is really like a meta of the game. That's kind of like a fighting game and really important. Like, what do you do that makes the character do a heavy falter that basically creates openings for yourself? On Ultra Nightmare, that kind of stuff becomes really important. That's like the black belt tier of like the nuance of the game. In the beginning, they faltered for everything. So I would say right off the bat, and as a result, you could use anything. So people would use the easiest weapons like the super shotgun, and you could just melt everything. And yeah, nobody in the office was playing the game. I didn't want to play the game, and so having Marty and I talk basically like 2 to 3 times a day about the game, always, still to this day. And it was at a high level, just like, this is boring. Like, it's, and as a matter of fact, the charm of push forward combat and glory kills, that was at that point, years
It's old
like
news.
It was old news. Nobody gives a shit, like, so right away, making hard rules around falters immediately made the game more engaging.
Cool.
And engagement became the obsession, because basically you started to break it down to like, this isn't fun. Well, why? It's not engaging. I'm not thinking. And because I'm not thinking, I'm bored. And so, okay, well, let's wipe the slate clean with falters, and start to make some firm rules around falters, and the engagement went up. It was then I could walk up to any enemy and shoot them with a point blank. The strongest gun in the game was the super shotgun. Still, I could walk up to any enemy and put it on them point blank, and pull the trigger and destroy them. And so it was like, okay, well, what if I can't do that anymore? What if? And Dash made this way worse, because I could dash in and dash out, so nothing could touch me. So if you put Dash in 2016 right now, you would break that game in absurd ways. Like, nothing would touch you. So, and that and Meat Hook, it's not even close. So like, it was, okay, well, if you go up to a character and get close to them, we hyper overtuned their response. Like, the carcass melees you so fast with such an intense melee. And we started to allow displacement, which, listen, I would agree that in some instances it goes overboard. Especially on some of the tag 1 levels where there's so many things that could displace you, and the CC complaints of the tentacles displace me, and the whiplash's furrows displace me, and I'm in the fog and I can't see anything. What the hell? So, but allowing displacement was also a big contributor to engagement, because basically it made me respect the AI. And so, oh, I'm going to go do this to this cart. Boom. Like, whoa, okay. Like, that's a thing. And then, like, not everything I do fault. So little by little, the engagement meter, went up. I would say the second, in a big way, started to say one of the big sparks of 2016 was the chainsaw. Like, I need something, I'm low on ammo, I use this tool, put myself at risk, lock myself into an animation in order to gain critical resources, and really just starting to hold the player accountable when it came to resource management. And so all these things started to add up to honestly just being firm with the player, and saying, like, listen, frustration, if used correctly, is a part of engagement in any experience that's worth my time. In chess, I can't do whatever I want. I have to follow certain soft rules. And losing and being frustrated is a part of the engagement loop. That's true of volleyball, of jiu-jitsu, and good video games. I have to give credit to everyone involved in the project from a management perspective, like Marty and Bethesda, to have the willingness to hold the player accountable like we do. Because, as you know, you can solve the game in a lot of different ways. I'll hear people say, like, well, you got to do the sticky bombs in the mouth, and we could save this for later conversation, but, like, as you know, Mayo, you do not need to do that. Like, it's recommended and it's cool, and it's certainly a skill shot, but, like, you could kill them like a million ways. But like, holding the player accountable is hard to do. It's scary a little bit, but I think it's necessary in order to make the experience engaging. I would point players to your video on Challenge Matters. I mean, that's it, really.
Oh, well, thank you. That took me like 4 months to figure out how to put together because I figured I had one shot.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so here's another question. I don't really have these in any particular order. I just want to hit as many as I can because I have so many things I want to ask. Everyone likes the new meat hook platforming sections in Tag 2, and I assume the idea has been around for a while. What made you guys decide against including it in the base game?
Rich Eastwood, big shout out to him, wanted to have meat hook traversals in the game, and so did I. But really, it just we put so much shit into Doom Eternal, we just didn't have room. That's really the answer. It's just like ran out of time and resources to be able to execute on it in a way that we wanted to. Didn't really spend a lot of time on it either because, like, I would say that meat hooks and the use of the meat hook as a tool for traversal was still kind of an unknown in development. I mean, we knew what it could do, and it pulled you to the player, and you could launch yourself in the air and use momentum and all those things. But it kind of took the release of the game a couple of months to take place, and even Tag 1 for us to really, for it to become this tool that it became. And then I think the uses of meat hook traversals became more obvious. So while we talked about doing something in Eternal, honestly, the ideas didn't really crystallize until we had several months of footage out there of players to be able to be like, okay, this is how we could use it. And we're very proud of. I am so proud of the team with what they did. The programming, the work that was done to make that feel the way it does. It was tremendous. So really, really kudos to the team for the level of polish that is on the meat hook traversals. And I would agree. I think we just scratched the surface. We could have done twice as many meat hook traversals. I don't know. I'd still be satisfied. But unfortunately, the DLCs are kind of short. So I wish we could have done more.
Yeah, I like. There's that first arena in the World Sphere that has the meat hook point up in the air that you can swing over, and like I could easily imagine something like that in Super Gornest, right?
Yeah.
Like it
Totally.
could have just been there, and I think it would have been really cool just to have a couple like basic little meat hook points, because I find that the first time you play the game, or even the first couple times, for a lot of players who are good now, back in March 2020, we didn't even really use the meat hook much on our first playthrough because you just get yourself killed. You don't really know what to do with it. And I wonder if a couple little points here and there that were optional might have gotten people to be like, oh, let me play with this thing a little more.
What's really cool about Eternal is that it's such a deep game that, to be honest, I honestly just feel like we're just now really reaching the potential of what all of the chess pieces and the tools can accomplish when combined. Like, honestly, the encounters in Tag 2, I think, are some of the smartest encounters in Tag 1 that we've ever done. And the chess pieces, by the time we've arrived to Tag 2 with the Screecher and the Curse Prowler, the Armored Baron, and all these characters, and all the Tag 1 guys of the Blood Angel, we're able, honestly, I think it's kind of the peak of Eternal's combat at this point. It's hard to make a master level without all those pieces, I'll tell you. We're making, I already announced this, apologies to people, but like, Taras Nabad right now, we're working on that master level. And not having some of those, I wish we could use the Screecher. I wish we could use the Spirit, it's like, man, I love so much that the Spirit and the Blood Angel are one of the best ways to hold great players accountable. I love it. Like, because I know that there's no amount of Barons that I could throw in there that's going to stop a Toyota. You're not going to stop them, And I think you got to have that. You got to have a good amount of bullet sponge players, a good amount of bullet sponge chess pieces out there for, the Himps and the Toyotas to just tee off on, because that's fun. But I know that anytime I want to really, really, hold them accountable and say, okay, I'm really going to make you think now, give me one possessed demon and 2 Screechers. Now we're talking.
Right.
You know what I mean?
You can't just ice bomb a couple heavies when there's a Bloodmaker about to snipe you across the arena.
100%. And like, I could see them, meat hook, super shotgun combo. There you go. Like, well, guess what? The ballista super shotgun combo is not going to work right now, Or the Blood Angel, I think, is so effective like this. So effective. Like, you have to respect them so much. And in a second, I could make that arena so challenging by just having 3 of them.
Yeah.
3 blood angels in an arena, that's a serious matter. Like,
Especially if something else is drawing your attention away from them.
yeah, and exactly. And like some of the stuff we haven't even had a chance to do yet, but I hope we could do with the DLC 2 master level is like, what about like a possessed cursed prowler? Like a cursed prowler that doesn't go down with one ballista shot. Like right
You don't
now,
mean blood
if
punch.
you could take out a cursed prowler with anything before he curses you.
Oh, right,
Like,
right. Okay.
So like, let's just say, and obviously we need to make the sound cue for when he enters the arena. My
And
deep apologies.
yes.
That's not in there. That is
and that he gives you a blood punch if you don't have one.
yes, those two things are just bad game direction. They should have been there at the start. But the like, let's just say we get that stuff in there. Right now, you see him ballista shot,
Yeah,
done. But just imagine if he's possessed.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like,
God.
and there's more than one. Like, what about 2 possessed cursed prowlers? Okay, now it's like I think you're really making something. So it's amazing. Like, I don't know. There's still so much more that we could do, and I honestly, that's what master levels are for. And I think the modding community also, honestly, like, just the stuff that they're doing is fantastic.
Well, you're terrifying me right now, Hugo. Thank you for that. Okay, so here's the next question I have. What classic 90s video games or maybe early 2000s are the most treasured to you and you feel have had some kind of impact on your design philosophy of the fun zone and player accountability?
I don't know so much video games. I mean, my answers are always. I mean, I think your video is pretty spot on. I mean, I think when you look at the original classic video games, the rule set around them, it's firm, and I do think that that's a part of like any experience. Like, there's a genre of gaming that maybe like, and I love them, like open world games that maybe they're a bit looser, more of like a sandbox, but even those still have some kind. I mean, like, just to say that one genre of game, which is fantastic, means that not that anybody's saying this, but I just think those rules work for that game, and but having some kind of like a goalpost to the experience, white chalk that outlines the edges of the experience, and you're asking players to kind of like remain inside of that. I just think that's a general principle of any experience of that kind that's satisfying, especially one that is skill based, I would say. So you got to learn to build and shoot in Fortnite. That's it.
Yeah.
And 50 million kids love that game, and that's polarizing. That's what's funny is like the thing that makes that game work is also the thing that can be very frustrating to people who aren't good at it or who don't want to do it, but like it's also what makes the game incredibly satisfying and gives it such a high skill ceiling is like there are these basic general principles that you kind of have to master if you want to be good at it, and that's where the engagement comes from. So like I would say, like, as you pointed out, like just your old school Mario games, you know what I mean, that like they have basic rules, and sort of core tenets to the experience that make it engaging, and without those things it's just not going to be engagement. Like, yes, we could give you endless amounts of ammo, but should we? Like, what would that do to the engagement of the experience? I don't think that, like, I think it would make it stupid. That's really it. And then as a result, the engagement would go down. I honestly think that when we were thinking about it, it was more about looking at just experiences as a whole. Like chess. I hate to crowbar jiu-jitsu into everything, but like jiu-jitsu was kind of also, because it's this thing that I'm like relatively new to. I mean, I've been doing it for 5 years, but it's just kind of like the belt progression and learning and growing and increasing engagement. And the more you do jiu-jitsu, the more you get into it, and I'd say that's true at chess. I mean, I had a little run where I was kind of into chess for a while. And I'm not good at chess, but just like these defined sets of rules, and then what you do is you allow the creativity to flourish inside those things. But to say that you can't have boundaries to your experience And just because I put a white chalk line down on a soccer field, or that there's an out of bounds on a basketball court, that stifles creativity. It's like, have you seen Michael Jordan and LeBron James play? Like, would you say that they're not being creative inside the bounds of that experience? That's just not true at all. And like, in jiu-jitsu as an example, like, my jiu-jitsu game is nothing like anybody's in my class, and that's not to say it's unique. It's just my body type and the way that I do it. It just suits me. There's,
Targeting
you
weak
favor.
points.
That's it. It's like some people favor the PB, some people favor the ballista, some people like to use lots of grenades. I was watching one player play, and they had this one clear technique that they liked, where they would round up AI by kind of standing still purposely for a brief moment. All of the fodder would come to them like imps. Then they would burn and grenade, and and through that one action, they would get all of their shit back. I don't play that way. That's not how I do it. I'm more of I focus on the heavies, and I ice, burn, and blood punch, and that's how I like to get large amounts of resources back. So yeah, it's just there's plenty of creativity inside the bounds of Eternal.
Hey, speaking of basketball, did you watch The Last Dance?
I love that documentary.
Oh man,
yeah. I'm a huge
what
Bills
a movie.
fan.
I'm not even a basketball fan, and I loved it. It was so good.
It is good.
All that old footage, but it's in HD, so it's like you're watching them now. It was really good.
Well, and the part that I relate to, honestly, is all of it. But Marty and I often use sports comparisons to the team, because it's interesting how, like, they lost because even though Jordan was at his peak, they still lost because they hadn't come together yet as a team. And once they learned how to come together as a team, where all of the parts mattered, not just Jordan, they were able to really have success. And that is so true of game development. Like, we need everybody. We need to have that kind of synergy, and to truly be a great team in order to execute on this stuff. Like, that is what Eternals. If you like Eternal, it's a credit to the team, because and how we all work together, myself included, and I'm just a part of that overall machine. Because in order to have the kind of synchronicity required to pull off the stuff that's in Eternal, where there's a consistency, and it is meticulously designed. I mean, every aspect of the game feeds into itself, and that means everybody's got to be on board, because if you have an idea over here in design, and then it goes to concept, and if concept is not on board, and let's say they're not in sync, right? And there's not good synergy, and they just decide, yeah, I don't want to draw the Marauder like that. Let's say instead of a shield, he's got this. Well, now you're not going to be able to execute. So it goes from like an idea to the arts. And by the way, along the way, you're pivoting based on the work that the people are doing. Because if they're in sync and they're engaged, then they're like, hey, I know what you're trying to do here. And like, what if it's like this? Like, and oh, that's great. So it requires a talented group of individuals coming together as a team, contributing to something, contributing to the whole, in order to pull off something successful, and an experience that feels really cohesive. Which, listen, that's what I think Eternal is. I think Eternal is anything but consistent and confident in what it's trying to do. Not to say that it's perfect, obviously. I think 2016, Eternal, both of these games are awesome, stand on their own. But yeah, they also have room for improvement for sure. But yeah, there's a lot. When I watch that, that's what I see. Is I'm like, that's like game development. It takes a team.
Great. Speaking of team and design, I wanted to talk about a couple of design decisions in Eternal, things that have come with updates. I'm working on a bit of a research project about the Doom Eternal experience for the Ultra Nightmare runners, for the streamers, for the speed runners, and like how they experience things different from other players. And so there's all kinds of things I could ask with that, but I've narrowed it down to two just for this conversation. The first one's on the Marauder. The Marauder spawns his dog when he blocks attacks with his shield, and as a punishment for trying to shoot him directly. And so players get better at dealing with him correctly, which there's several ways to do. And the reward is that they don't have to deal with the dog. However, the Marauder blocks friendly fire and causes the dog to spawn anyway. Was that an oversight? Was that intentional? And if it was intentional, what was the idea behind it?
It's total accident.
Really? Okay, so is that something that you guys would take away?
No.
But you would keep it?
Well, you know this, that you and I've talked about this. The experience is what it is now.
Yeah.
Like if we go to change stuff, there's varying degrees of things we're willing to change. Like if we have data that shows that people are consistently dying here and they're either quitting the game or they're cheesing it, then that's something I want to change. And
Okay.
I've learned my lesson. I will talk to the community and say, "Hey guys, I think we should do this. I mean, the data says that this would be a good thing to change." But stuff like that adds to the challenge, and I don't want to mess with that. Like because the wolf dog is such a huge part of what makes him a challenge. Like the
Yeah.
dog is just awesome. I love the dog, but like in terms of like the dog is what throws in that X factor that like because the Marauder is pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Just like bait out his attacks, do your thing. But the thing I love about him that we worked so hard on is there's just a percentage of he's not 100% predictable. Like sometimes he doesn't do what you think he'll do, and that's critical to making him engaging consistently.
He'll just run
Like I
up on
find
you and just stop and look at you for a moment.
that's it. And if he always did the same thing, he would not be cool. Like he'd be cool, but like it'd be just a walk in the park. Just having just enough randomization in what he does is so critical to the engagement around the Marauder that
Okay.
he's not always going to do what you think he's going to do. And the dog is critical to that because the dog is the one that throws everything off. It's like, okay, I'm sitting here and oh fuck, he summoned the dog. Damn it. So now I have to look down. And the whole point of the dog was we wanted it to distract the player because we knew that the player would be sitting there waiting. And so you summon the dog, he's biting at your ankles. You have to look away to deal with him. And now the Marauder's got a chance. So all the dog is an opportunity to open you up for the Marauder's attacks. And so anything that would mess with the frequency of that character, of the dog, I would just makes me super nervous.
I'm with you on that. I like. I mean, not everyone's going to share my opinion on this. I like the friendly fire block that can spawn the dog. I think that makes him, like you said, a little more unpredictable, and I like that. But I know that there are runners and streamers who don't like that aspect about him. So I guess it's a little polarizing depending on how you play the game. But I can definitely see where you're coming from on that. I think
Is my
did I lose you? I lost your
is,
video.
is my camera off?
Your
Oh
camera
shit!
your
Sorry.
camera went off.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree. Sorry.
no, that's okay. I don't know if you've seen that I like when the dog comes out now because I'm starting to use microwave beam falters on him, which I call hot dog. And if you beam the dog, he falters the Marauder, and if he's facing a certain direction, his shield will reveal him, and you can get one quick ballista shot, just one,
So
and it's
the
so
dog,
cool.
the dog faltering the Marauder on an explosion was definitely part of the design. We scaled that back a little bit because it started to be. There were some rule sets around that didn't age well, but it's a remnant of like what we wanted, which was like if you killed him near him, it would
Oh,
falter
really?
him. Yeah, probably what's happening is that the AOE blast of the dog popping, it might be a holdover of an old. But we did want the dog to falter the Marauder, but I do remember also
Interesting.
scaling that back quite a bit.
It feels programmed to be very, very limited because you can get it. You can stagger him, like you can falter him with the microwave beam explosion, but you literally have time for a ballista shot, and if you try to refalter him or anything, doesn't work. It is
Yeah,
so you can't abuse it. It's cool.
It got really imbalanced.
I
So
imagine.
that's probably what it is. Is like what you're stumbling on is like the remnant of an old system that we wanted to do,
Yeah.
but like scaled it back a bit.
It's badass because sometimes you simply cannot engage with the Marauder if there's too much happening around you, and he's coming, and so you're just like, oh, microwave beam, just get a quick shot and then get out of there, and then re-engage in another way. It's really fun. Okay, so here's the second question about like quality of life stuff and streamers and runners. And here, as game director, I know that you know a lot about your own game, but I'm sure there's plenty of stuff that you don't know. I mean, there's so many people working on it that do the programming and all that. So I don't even know if you have an answer to this question. Okay, as Doom Eternal has been updated, waiting periods have been inserted into the pause menu. Before, like in the early months of the game, You could pull up your menu at any time in the game and exit to the main menu or load the checkpoint immediately. But in the summer, in an update, they introduced a 10-second waiting period to load a checkpoint every time you open a new area. And upon loading a level or entering a new area, the latest update with Tag 2 introduced a new 3-second waiting period before you're allowed to even exit to the main menu. These kinds of waiting periods have been a bit frustrating for content creators like myself who need to regularly load and reload sections of a game for experimental purposes and recording purposes, as well as streamers and speedrunners who need to practice areas. So what was the reason behind these additions, and is there any way they could be rolled back?
Probably, I would say there may be a technical reason, but I don't know the answer. Billy or Evan would know, and I would definitely just recommend working with Josh to. You could work with Josh, create a list. We'll get that over to the team, and we'll investigate it. Because if we could get rid of it, we'd love to.
I want to do a video on this kind of stuff in the spirit of my bugs video, that is just like laying it out, like here's the things that are happening, here's the things that people like about it, or here's what might be an issue.
Yeah, we just need to.
I definitely want to
see what it is.
Cool.
That's it. If we know what it is and we have a list, there may be technical reasons, and if there isn't, and we can fix it, we'd love to.
That's great. All right. Excellent answer. Thank you very much. What was the first video game you worked on, and what did you do on it?
Jack X Team Racing, graduate from Art Center College of Design, automotive design with an emphasis on entertainment design. So basically car design. I was drawing Ferraris and Gundams. That's pretty much like what my education became. Like, it was absurd. Like, personal growth wise, the greatest period of my life. And if money was no object, what would I do? I'd go back to Art Center and just study endlessly more, because it's so much fun.
Have you ever built a car?
Yeah, clay model, not a real car.
Okay, but would you like to?
Like a real car?
Yeah, like do you know like enough about design, like automotive design as well, to be able to put a car together with a team or something?
No, I could design the exterior of a car, and I went to school for it. Like, I have friends who are real car designers, and they could do it better than me. Like, but I understand the exterior design of a car in a very limited capacity, but because again, I only studied it. But then after that, at the sort of tail end of my education, I catered it towards entertainment design, which is basically taking the education that I'd gained in the first 2 years towards automotive and industrial design towards entertainment. So when I graduated, and I we were learning design from the head of our department had designed the Enzo Ferrari. I mean, that's like at the time the number one supercar. Like, there was just crazy the education that you get at that school. It's worth every penny. It's very expensive though. And then I had a deep love for Disney and a big passion for sort of animated sci-fi products, and Jak and Daxter was something that was out that I always thought would really be awesome to work on. And I applied. I actually did a kind of a walk-in interview at Naughty Dog, and they gave me a job like on the spot, which was pretty awesome. Like, they had a Jak X Team racing game, and they needed something like 63 racing cars or 63 iterations of cars. I forgot what the number was. And each car had there was something like 12 cars with 6 variations each or something. And then each variation, it was broken down. Like, they had a high level concept of what they wanted to make. And it was these like basically stylized, Ferraris with machine guns mounted to them. They were like in the Jak and Daxter universe, super futuristic attitude, Mad Maxy kind of, like, really anything I wanted. Racing cars that you had to be able to customize and then mix and match to customization. And it was something they had been working on for a little while, and obviously it's a pretty hard assignment. Like, it was like a visual design puzzle that they were struggling to solve. So when I walked in there with my Art Center portfolio, that had a lot of like stylized animation stuff in it as well, because I was prior to going to Art Center, I'd worked in the animation industry, So I had like kind of like this mix of like animation and automotive design. They were just like it was cool because it was they were saying to me like, hold on, I'm getting called.
It's okay.
Who is calling me?
If you need to
Can
take
you
it,
hear
we
that?
can reconnect.
No, I just want to shut it off.
Okay.
I don't know what that is. Hey, well, let me turn that off. So I there was a bunch of content in my portfolio that Bob Raffy, the art director there, who's a good friend and ultimately I owe the start of my career to, was just like, just make him look like that, you know. So I sat down and figured out how all the components work, kind of worked out my own system. It's really hilarious how naive I was because the very first car I did a mock-up of what the car was, and because that's what I was used to doing in school. And I remember bringing it to him, and he's like, we don't need to do mock-ups of the car. So I was like, okay, you know, uh, and yeah, so I worked out my own process and I cranked through all of them, you know, like, and it was so much fun. There was a euphoric feeling that I had coming home from work every day and doing every second of that job because I had spent really like 8 years in school. Because first I went to Pratt, and then I went to Art Center. All told, 8 years of schooling, essentially 2 undergrad degrees, and all with just the hope of becoming a concept artist. And I wanted to be good at my job. Like that was the whole thing. Like I had been a concept artist prior to going to Art Center, but I had imposter syndrome. I really didn't feel like I was qualified to do what people were paying me to do. So when I went back to school, I wanted to learn like a real trade, and I went into, rather than just doing more illustration, I went into automotive design and learning how to, like, you know, build the exterior of a car was a tremendous learning experience and has formed the foundation of my skill set that I carry throughout my entire career. Really, I mean, people at id are completely sick of me using car design analogies, you know, for sure.
More than
But
jujitsu.
yeah, jiu-jitsu and cars, that's pretty much it. But so yeah, like being able to apply it was euphoric because it was like I felt like I had a purpose, you know. That's it. Like just the satisfaction of knowing like, hey, I'm good at this. Like I took the time, I paid my dues, I learned my craft, and I could show up every day, and the satisfaction of getting a good job, you know, at work was satisfying as hell. And the confidence to know that like I knew how to do my job. That's it. You know, I just would sit down, have an assignment, execute, show it to my boss, Bob. Bob would say, "Good job. Now do another one." I'd be like, "Thanks." And that just, I couldn't get enough of it. It was so satisfying.
Is there any way that you can send me some of those early concepts, and maybe I could put a couple screenshots in the video?
Yeah, yeah.
That'd be really cool.
My website is down. I haven't updated my website in like 8 years. So like for nostalgia reasons, I want my website up again. So yeah, I'll get that up again, and then you could see it.
Nice. Okay. If you could be given any video game property to have total creative freedom to do whatever you want, what would it be?
I mean, Doom is that property, so I would give it, total creative freedom is a strong word. I mean, any property that you work on, and this is honestly goes back to my education. Like part of it is working with people and working inside the constraints of the budget and the project and the brand. And so I enjoy having I guess it's true of the games that we design and honestly the projects that I work on is I like the edge of the box. I like knowing that there are constraints. Like that is important. The first thing you get, you know, anytime you work on a creative brief, you want to know what the boundaries are. Like what is the scope of the project? So I like that a lot actually. Um so total creative freedom, I don't know that you need that. But Doom is really the project. That's a lame answer, but so that's going to be my first answer. Um, then besides that, an existing IP.
And you could do a reboot of a 90s game that hasn't been around for 25 years, whatever you want.
Yeah, I don't. I couldn't say. I don't know. You know, they're all really cool. There's so many. And to be honest, for PR reasons, I probably shouldn't say.
Okay.
So like,
I thought that might be a complicated question.
Yeah, it's probably.
I was hoping like I would do a reboot of Tiny Toon Adventures from the Nintendo. Um,
I
okay,
do a reboot of Sega Genesis's Aladdin.
yeah,
That was a good game.
a new Altered Beast or something. Dude, Aladdin
Yeah,
was great.
that was an amazing
It
game.
was really really good. What's the better movie, Predator or Total Recall?
Predator. I think Predator is one of the great monster movies of our generation. Like when we were kids, I was talking about this with a friend the other day. Like when we were I was talking about it with Josh on the stream, I think a little bit too. Like we had, I remember watching the old Frankenstein movies and the old Wolfmans and the old, Draculas, and there were these, mythic, characters, from this Universal Studios mythology. They were classic monster movies, like, and they were so compelling, like the character. And then, kind of after that in the '80s, it was Jason and Freddy, which I give a lot of respect to those guys. I mean, I think those are
Fun,
really cool
schlocky movies,
but cool characters when you think about them, right? But like the Predator was the first, well, in the Alien, but I would say the Predator more recently, like the first true like monster movie, with like a new monster that was as cool and as iconic as Frankenstein and the Wolfman. When the Predator came out of the water for that first time in his hologram tech was
So
short circuiting, you got to see him. I mean, that's just such a moment, and it's not unlike Frankenstein raising up, from his slab and coming to life. I mean, it's just a great moment in cinema, and the introduction of a brand new movie monster.
I have a friend that hadn't seen it since he was like 3, and so we rewatched it just a couple days ago. That's why I put it on this list, and I just got some new Predator figures, and we were talking about how he's not just a monster. What makes him so good is not just his look, but if you don't have a gun, he won't shoot you. If you have no weapon, he won't attack you. He won't kill a pregnant woman. He won't kill a sick old man. They're like a samurai space hunter. They're not just murderers. That's what makes it the opposite of the Alien. It's so cool.
The one critique that I still have of that movie, and who am I to critique Predator? No one, but I will anyway. The just as a fanboy, is they set up this premise that like two great species will collide, and essentially Arnold Schwarzenegger at the time was considered the ultimate, human being, right?
Yeah.
Mr. Olympia, like 6 foot plus, like sort of like if you were going to send anybody at that, we didn't know anything about fighting. Obviously, he doesn't know how to fight, but like if you were going to send at that time, in terms of Hollywood icons, any sort of one person from the human race to in a fight, against some alien species, it would probably be, Arnold Schwarzenegger. So when they have that showdown at the end, it's not a showdown. He kicks the shit out of him. Like, I hate that. Like,
really,
I wish it was a good fight. Like, I wanted to see the very best that humanity had to offer. That's basically what they were saying. Is that's who his character was, and the Predator wipes the floor with him.
Well, I'll argue the counterpoint is that the whole movie is about the whole macho brute force aspect, and that is what doesn't work about the Predator. Arnold ends up defeating him because of his intelligence and his planning, and that's what I like about it.
I do. I wanted them to have.
You want more of a fight at the end as well, instead of him just getting smacked around?
I would have rather it have been more of a showcase of the determination of the human race. You know what I mean? Like, that's to me what resonates with the Rocky films and Sylvester Stallone. All of his stories, like whether it's Rambo or Rocky, is he understood that like he taps into his films are aspirational. Like there's an aspect of Rocky that like he wins because he's determined, and that seems achievable to all of us. Like anybody can get up from the canvas. He's not doing anything that requires superhuman strength. It's just his will that makes him great, and that's something that we all possess.
And that's what I think Arnold does it in Predator. He outsmarts him. He doesn't have to be strong.
He does, but it's less of a. Yeah, it's just it always bugged me. I don't know. Like again, it's like when Rocky faces off with his villains, and his antagonists. There it was always like a real showdown. That you always walked away from feeling satisfied. That like he gave his all and the bad guy gave his all, and in the end, Rocky won. Whereas I feel like Arnold's just yes, he outsmarts him, but like he just kind of lays traps and yeah, it really did bug me when I was a kid. I was just like, dude, he's
Really?
getting his ass kicked. Like, come on, like
That's
dude,
so
he
funny.
doesn't even hit him. Like he hits him once, like I would have loved a moment where they're like the Predator steps to him and just assumes he's gonna wipe the floor with him, and then Arnold, like when Rocky hits Drago and Drago he's cut and he makes Drago bleed.
Yeah.
Like I would have loved a moment for Arnold to just the Predator underestimates the human race and Arnold just hits him with a shot, and it's a cliche, but like the Predator spits blood and like looks at his own blood and is like, are you son of a bitch, like you made me bleed, like and then he really has to try, and then he starts to kick his ass, but like that Arnold brought out the best of the Predator. Like that's what I wish would have happened. And ultimately he really doesn't. What happens is he kicks the shit out of him so bad, and then the Predator just becomes so completely overconfident that he becomes stupid, and then he wins. So like, which is like, that's not very heroic. Like,
All right, we'll have to agree to disagree on this one, buddy.
I like that's what I love about Revenge of the Sith is when they face off, man, that is satisfying. Like when Anakin fights Obi-Wan, they go at it for like 20 minutes and it's amazing. Like of course it ends with the high ground shit, but like still though, it's just such an amazing fight. I love how it's the two Jedis at their peak and they just go off on each other. It's so friggin' satisfying. I've watched that so many times.
Are you a fan of B movies at all? Like what's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
favorite bad movie?
My favorite bad movie. There are many. It's hard to say. Let me think about that. My favorite.
Mine would
bad
be
movie.
Future War.
Sure. I don't know.
The Room. I mean, The Room is a classic answer.
I've never seen that. I can't.
You need to sit down with some friends. Sit down with some friends. You'll laugh. I laughed to tears at least 3 or 4 times.
That's awesome. I don't know that I really have a favorite bad movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it's hard to say. Maybe there is one, and I'm just not thinking of it right now. But
I'm kind of getting into the random questions I have now. I do have 2 more Doom questions. I'll get to those quick. All right.
Well, I would say this. Like people consider, like I showed Evil Dead 2 to my brother-in-law.
All right.
And he thought that was so fucking stupid. Like I remember sitting there, and there was definitely a moment where my wife was laughing, and not because she thought it was funny. She was laughing because he was just like, "Dude, are you serious? Are we really watching this right now?" Like, and it made me realize that like this is a really good bad movie. Like like there's
it's not supposed to be serious.
Yeah, like there's Hawaiian Punch coming out of this dude's neck, and like I loved it, but it never really dawned on me that it's like, it's kind of a schlocky movie, but it's glorious, like it's a genius kind of, but so maybe that's like my favorite.
Do you like
bad
Evil
movie,
Dead? Do you like Evil Dead 2 better than Army of Darkness? Because I like Army of Darkness better.
Yeah, I do, and I think that a lot of people feel about Doom 2016 the way they feel about. I think there's a comparison to be made between Evil Dead 2 and Army of Darkness and 2016 and Eternal.
Interesting.
Like, I think that for a lot of people, the simplicity of Evil Dead 2, and I'm one of those, I like that better than Army of Darkness. But then there's a lot of people who like Army of Darkness better because it's just it's a bigger movie. It's a more complete film. I do like Army of Darkness though.
Interesting. Yeah, that's just the one I grew up with. Are you a fan of the classic survival horror games of Resident Evil and Silent Hill?
Yeah, not Silent Hill so much, but certainly a fan of Resident Evil. I mean, I'm not an uber fan. I haven't played them all, but like I played the re-release recently of 2, I believe it was, and just a tremendous respect for that game.
Solid game.
Awesome game. And I actually have Resident Evil. I have Resident Evil 4 that has been sitting here in the package forever and needs to be played.
Yeah, I get to that before Village comes out. I want to go back and play 7 again just to refresh.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of a game with that holds the player super, super accountable, and that's why it's engaging. Just imagine if ammo resource management and they were a little bit soft with the rules,
Mm-hmm.
like because the whole time you're dying for another bullet. The game is you're in their fun zone, and the rules are just you're surrounded by frustration points. You know what
Which
I mean?
makes you
Like
want to explore as
that's
well.
it. Like everything counts in that game. Everything. And that's what's so good about it.
So good. That's why I used it in the Challenge Matters video. I just couldn't imagine how bad that game could be. Because I went through that actually when Resident Evil 2 came out. They released in the original, they released a DualShock edition on PS1, and this was around the time of Metal Gear Solid 1. I stayed the night with a friend, and we played all the way through Metal Gear Solid 1 with his older brother, and his older brother was like, "This is amazing." And then we popped on Resident Evil 2, the DualShock version, which was a game I loved. But there was an option to start that game in a mode that started you with the submachine gun instead of a pistol with 15 bullets. And so my friend's older brother was running around the first levels just just killing all the zombies. It's like, this is stupid. This sucks. And that was my first experience with the whole fun zone thing. And I was a little kid and I didn't even realize it.
Yeah, I think Resident Evil games are a really good example of how, you surround the player with frustration. Like if they veer out, if they shoot, if I go into a Resident Evil like, just shoot like crazy, cool. Guess what's going to happen? I'm going to die,
Yeah.
or I'm going to make it harder on myself. I hit that frustration point and I get funneled back into the fun zone of like, and you call it that because conserving your ammo, crafting resources, giving a shit about the systems, that's where the fun of the game is. Like if I'm funneling you into an experience like, you shot too many of your bullets and the thing you funneled me into sucks. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't. That's when that game comes alive. Is when you're in, I mean, you're surviving. It's survival horror, totally.
Now that we're back on the fun zone, I'm going to go to a couple of my last Doom questions. One, the new enemies of DLC 1 and 2 have specific ways to deal with them, or they have heavy resistances to certain weapons. What is the idea behind introducing enemies that aren't just killed like everything else? And do these enemies signal that you are interested in making a game in the future that's full of enemies like this? Maybe not a Doom game, but something else?
No, well, to answer the second, what is the purpose to make you think, and that's it? We know that by the time we get to DLC 2 and 1, we've seen the metas that crystallize, right? It's ballista super shotgun, right? It's people achieve a level of mastery. They've
Or
upgraded
PB
their stuff.
Rocket.
BB
Yeah.
Rocket did different things. So our job with DLCs now, because there's a core, you're already dealing with your core audience. Like, the only people who buy DLCs are people who know and love your core combat loop, right? So right there, we know that we could focus on them. And like, if repetition leads to a lowered amount of engagement and eventually you churn out of the experience, right? Because that's what happens. Once you've solved the puzzle and you're just doing the same thing over and over again, yes, there's a period of dominance and satisfaction, but then you do kind of like slowly start to lose. We described during development the engagement graph, and it was kind of like, that you start the experience and there has to be 5 minutes of fun. Like as soon as I shoot a guy, glory kill him, do things, it's satisfying. So moving and shooting in Doom Eternal feels satisfying. And then we immediately start to drop you down into this period of frustration where we're teaching you things. And then as you learn to look around to find the solution, that's where engagement increases. And then eventually you work your way up. It's a series of like frustration, learning, engagement, frustration, learning, engagement. And then you get to the top, and that's mastery. But you don't stay there at the top, the peak of engagement. Eventually you spend enough time there and you slowly start to get bored, and that happens in anything, right? Any game. As good as Apex Legends or some FPS combat competitive experience is, once you play it enough, So with DLC, it's a chance to re-engage the player. And the way we re-engage you is the reason why you're losing interest is because you're starting to fall into repetition and sort of a pattern. And so our job is to simply break those patterns. And by doing that, we re-engage the player. Can we make a whole game of that? So by the way, they're designed based on specifically like to try to break your patterns. That's
Yeah.
why the spirit is resistant to the ballista. You know, that's why the blood angel requires you to pay attention, because we know that the amount of DPS that Hey Kyle could put out
Yeah.
is so absurd.
He could just
that if
combo it and it dies like anything
that's
else.
it. We could just, hey, here's the new AI, and he's got 20,000 hit points. Cool. Hey Kyle's just like,
boom,
you know,
boom,
PB
boom, boom.
rocket, PB rocket, PB rocket, PB rocket.
Grenade.
Cool. What else?
Yeah.
What else you got? You know, so, but if we say this AI will command your respect, it will do a devastating attack that will slow you down, and you have to study it because it'll give you these controlled instances to kill it, and you have to focus on doing certain things. Immediately, Hey Kyle is blasting through the experience, and then he has to stop, and he's like, oh shit, now I have to pay attention, and now he's engaged again. That's it. Can we make a whole game like that? No.
I wouldn't think so.
Awful.
That would be really bad.
So what happened in Tag 2 was we now had enough unique chess pieces to engage the player, right? Between Screechers, Blood Angels, 2 DLCs worth. That's why on DLCs we focused on those type of AI, because we don't need any more bullet sponges. We have a whole roster of bullet sponges, from the base game. So it was about more of the Marauder types that kind of command your attention. What happened in Tag 2 was what we found, and that's why I think honestly we got really good at pacing, is that we found that like asking you to think and change your strategy too many times in a single arena fight got frustrating. There's definitely a threshold for like, okay, now I need to do this. Oh, and now I need to switch to this auto shotgun mod. Now I need to do that thing. And if I asked you to do that too many times in one encounter, it was not fun. It was so frustrating.
I see.
So it's dialing it into like making sure that it's kind of like food. It's like making a good sauce, right? I mean, I don't make good tomato sauce, but if I did, I would imagine that there's only so much garlic and only so much oregano and only so much salt. And so, yeah, these unique AI, that's the little bit of pepper, can't have too much of it. Otherwise it'll get too spicy. But that's it. And no, we should not make, you can't have too much salt in the experience. You got to have just enough.
Yeah, that's why I said maybe not a Doom game, but something else. Because I mean, a Doom game can't be a Doom game unless there's a whole bunch of monsters that you can just take down with your guns. But are you ever interested someday in taking this to the extreme and maybe like a top-down turn-based game? Or I'm just like throwing out terms.
No, I just think that id needs to, and we want to continue to push the envelope on FPS design. Okay. I think that's our job and our role in the gaming space, is that like what people have, and I'm simply, the company began like this, like I think if you look back at the original Doom, it was pushing the envelope. And so what we want to do is make sure that we're providing people with unique experiences. Who needs another shoot guys with your gun, walk down the hallway game?
Not on a AAA level. That's for the indie space now.
That's it. Like, we just don't need that. Like, make me think. Give me a new combat puzzle to solve. Like a new combat loop. And I like a thinking person shooter. Like, I think that's a good thing. Like, there's some aspects of, look, it's not for everyone, but it's just like if. Some of the like, give me more ammo, let me use anything I want. It's like, okay, well then it's mindless. Like that just basically means it's imbalanced, And look, there's a balance though to that. Like too much, like I said, too much rock, paper, scissors design, not good. Too restrictive, not good. The Baron is a really good example of where I think we could head in the future. The Armored Baron.
What a creature, man. He's so good. And
I think the Armored Baron is the best of every. Honestly, I think the Armored Baron is a culmination of everything we've learned over 2 DLCs and 1 full game, because he strikes the perfect balance of the skill shot opportunities. The skill shot opportunities of the Marauder, right, with the green eye flash, but he does it often enough that it doesn't feel too restrictive. Like, you've got plenty of opportunities to do it. The skill shot opportunity was purposely designed to be pretty hittable. I mean, that thing is fucking huge. And then you also have the low skill path. Like you could just shoot him with anything you want. So it's like 3 tiers. You could shoot him with anything you want to break his armor. You could shoot him with the right weapon to break his armor faster, or you could shoot him with a skill shot to break it instantly.
Yeah.
And I think that is the sweet spot. But in particular, the fact that once his armor breaks, it can regenerate. So you're creating this window of opportunity that then closes. Because just imagine if he didn't regen his armor.
Yeah.
I think the experience with that character would be totally different. So, and then using it steers the player into DPS combos, because what they learn is, okay, I have a window of opportunity here, and it encourages players to combine their attacks to do maximum amount of damage and resource reallocation, that resource acquisition. That's the cornerstone of Doom. I mean, that character is Doom Eternal in a nutshell.
He's so good.
And I love the fact that lesser skilled players. Look, you guys, I know that you don't need to use the hammer to pry open his falter window to be able to. You could take him out in one go. But what I like is that for lower skill players, they could use the hammer to create a massive window that they could just take him out easily,
Right. Yeah. In the mod scene, we're starting to see what 2 or 3 armored barons together start to feel like, and I think I speak on behalf of everyone that in the upcoming master levels, we cannot wait to see armored barons together, working together, because that is such a cool a kind of pressure when you're trying to focus down. You're trying to get one armored baron taken down while the other one just can't be stopped. It's beautiful.
So we took it. By the way, that was in Tag 2.
Was it?
And I took it out because it was too much. Like, it required for the base content. For the master level,
sure,
it's a different story. But like, what I found was for the entirety of the Doom audience, not just the black belts. It felt like it was too much for the reasons you said. So for one group, it's incredibly satisfying, but then for another, it honestly,
you're like, damn it, I can't do anything.
It made you dislike the character. Like, it was, because it was kind of like, okay, this thing that I think is cool and I like doing now is pissing me off. And what I found was, again, the full spectrum of Doom fans, they would be frustrated that they were trying to break the armor while the other guy was wrecking them. And it made you start to get frustrated with the whole system. Like, well, why can't I break it? Blah, blah, and restrictive gameplay, so I think that I erred on the side of just a little bit more, nicer to the player, but certainly with the master levels, you'll definitely see more than one.
That's exciting. Here's my last Doom question. In the No Clip documentary, you cited RoboCop as an influence for some aspects of Doom 2016. RoboCop's my favorite movie. I'm doing a video on it probably this summer.
Yeah.
Could you elaborate on that, on specifically how RoboCop was influential and what other movies have inspired parts of Doom and Doom Eternal?
I think that RoboCop definitely, just because of the camp, like it's self-aware and smart camp, so 2016 was inspired by that, but I think more so Eternal. Like, Eternal is a campy game, but it's also like, if you've ever seen the Peter Jackson movie Dead Alive, it's really good. Have you ever seen that?
I have, but it's been like 20 years. I don't
but
remember.
It's that over the top, buckets of gore. That kind of, like, I think Eternal really kind of embraces. And Eternal and 2016 are meant to be different experiences. I think that's where, like, people they compare the two, but they're not really trying to be the same. I mean, that's the funny. It's like, sometimes I'll hear people say, like, well, it's like they didn't understand what made 26. It's like they're different games. So 2016 and Eternal is meant to be like, standalone experiences in a sense, but they are sequels, obviously. But the camp of RoboCop, the way that he handled the violence, like, the original Doom's take on gore was cartoonish and lighthearted while also being, like, incredibly gory for the time. And so when you think about a property that pulled that off really well, it is RoboCop. Like, when the blood packets that come out of the people, when Lawrence shoots up the guy's legs.
Oh, God. Yeah, Bob
like
Morton.
the chunks of meat coming off his legs are crazy. Like, I just remember as a kid being like, that's a lot of chunks.
It feels so painful just to watch it.
Yeah. And so yeah, but you didn't like, it wasn't mean spirited. I guess that's the best
Yeah.
part. Like it was the most absurdly violent thing I'd ever seen as a kid. Yet it was not oddly off-putting. Like because it was uh it was campy. It was like a cartoon almost.
No one's
So
getting their guts ripped out, right? It's not that kind of
yeah,
gore.
no, totally. Whereas like yeah, so compare that to the original Alien and the first time I saw the chest burster sequence.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
I was I was deeply affected. Like so that was a big influence. And then you said like what other movies?
Well, can I make an observation real quick? In the Mars core, when the Doomslayer walks down and everyone's like looking at him like, "Oh God, that's RoboCop." When he walks
Yeah,
in the police station the first time, and they're like, "What the hell is this?"
it's 100% that. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's that. It's the Terminator entering the bar.
Yeah.
It's Michael Myers. It's what does it feel like to be Michael Myers and walking through a space, or the Terminator, like, and the player feeling powerful through the hero's eyes, because you see how people are impacted by my mere presence, and so how would that stroke the player's ego? Because I've said this a million times, but like Doom at its core is just a power fantasy. It's meant to make you feel strong. So what better way to make the player feel strong than to walk into a room and have everybody be so affected by you? When we were in the mocap studio, I played the role of the Slayer, and I walked in.
Is this the first time that anyone's hearing this?
Yeah, it is actually. So when we filmed that sequence, we have a great animation team. Big credit to those guys; they killed it. I I didn't have the mocap suit on, but I acted as the Slayer, and then I had Alan and a couple of the guys, like I think it was just Alan, but like Alan maybe and one other person react and play the part of the scientists because they were
There
capturing
has
the
to be a
data.
video of this. Please
There
publish
probably
this.
is. And I would kind of use my eyes as the camera, so I would get a sense of what it looked like, what it will kind of look like to the player as he's doing it. And look, again, the inspirations are spot on. It's RoboCop in the cop station. It's Terminator. It's Michael Myers. It's Jason Voorhees. It's all those
Yeah.
things. The breathing through the eye holes as he walks, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" So when we were in the mocap booth, you could feel it. Like I remember, so I kept saying like, "Treat me like I'm the Fonz, like I'm the coolest, like I'm a giant Bengal tiger that just walked into the room, like or Jason Voorhees, like or just something terrifying, and you're like in awe of me, like I'm the Fonz, I'm the coolest guy on the planet." And the because they're not. There's a difference, like it's not that they're terrified, they are terrified, but they're also like in awe of you. Like there's a subtle difference that like if it was Michael Myers, they would just run.
Right.
But the way that they look at you, they're like, "Oh my god, it's him!" Like I kept emphasizing, like this is an old reference, but the Fonz. I was like, I am the coolest person. Like, Elvis just entered the building. Like, how do you act?
Yeah.
And I could feel it in the mocap room that how the player will feel because it felt amazing. Like I have to say, I joked to them. I'm like, if we do this for too long, this is going to warp my brain because this is like buckets of ego just being like filled to the max because walking around and having people just like in awe of you, it was hilarious. I'm like, this is like a drug. This feels really good, like but you could feel it, like how it was going to feel for the player, and it was cool. It was a really cool moment. I love working with those guys. It's just a great group of guys.
Well, your answer pretty much covers the second part of the question where I said what other movies inspired parts, and you're talking about Michael Myers and Terminator, and so that pretty
we
much
we had
covers
a
that.
critical conversation because the animators nailed his walk. I think like when he walks into Mars core and he's walking towards the pod that comes down, I mean that walk is perfect, and Alan and his team fucking killed it. But their original take, there's a subtlety to the way he walks. And at one point, they had one take where he walked and he felt more human. And so it helped us establish a baseline for who the character is just by his mannerisms and the way he walked. And on one side, you had Sylvester Stallone, the Rambo character, right? So a person, he sweats, he bleeds, he struggles, he overcomes. On the other side, I think you had Michael Myers in the Terminator, like killing machines, like uh, without emotion, emotionless killing machines. And then there's something in the middle. And honestly, I think that the Slayer is more towards Michael Myers. So they tightened it up and they changed it, and he walks with this kind of intensity and focus. That's you know is he almost inhuman? Like a focus that almost makes him seem inhuman.
Dude, this is
And
RoboCop. This is exactly RoboCop. It's the stoic, determined look, but there humanity behind those eyes? Yes, there is.
yes, with one tweak is that RoboCop is the pistons and the
Oh
gears in
yeah,
his
he's
body,
overly mechanical. Sure.
yeah, force him to work with a kind of a rigidness that I think is because he's a robot. The Slayers is more of because he's this hyper focused killing machine.
Yeah.
And the idea that like when you're around him, he might rip your arm off. You don't know. Like he could. It's like being around a tiger. We kept saying that. Like being around a Bengal tiger. Like what would that be like? There's something about the way that a tiger enters the room whenever you see footage on TV. They are super chill, but everybody around them freaks out. That was key to that experience.
Okay. Um, oh, while we're on these '80s action movies, one thing that I have noticed rewatching Predator with friends who have never seen it before is that they spot the influence on early video games, and I never did. Like, I have a friend who loves all the Metal Gear games but had never seen Predator, and then he's watching the first 30 minutes of Predator of them sneaking through the jungle and crawling in the leaves, and he's like, this is Metal Gear. And I'm like, well, yeah, this is '87. Metal Gear 1 came out what, '89 or something? This has to have been influenced by Predator. And then you look at Predator's guns, and all of Predator's guns are like assault rifle with grenade attachment on there, which is now what you see in military shooter games. The first appearance of the minigun, which was a few years later introduced in Wolfenstein 3D as a gun. I think that movie had a lot of influence on video game action design.
Yeah, totally, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, look, it's everything, right? It's television shows, it's movies, it's games, it's comics. I think they all influence each other.
I'll tell you what. We've been going for like an hour and a half, and I'm sure you have things you got to do. I'm sure Josh is tired of sitting there in silence.
I'm gonna go fishing.
Fishing.
I have 30 minutes left of sunlight.
There's one question you didn't ask, and it's the most important question.
I have two really quick ones. I thought I could do.
It's three words.
Oh yeah, that's the last one. That's the last one I'm doing because I'm afraid that he might spiral off into 15 minutes of justification. Okay.
That's good content.
Okay,
that's good.
Yeah, that'll be a whole separate video. Okay, the first one I want to know is, you have a lot of collectible figures. What is your favorite collectible figure? What's your main piece that you got to show people when they come to your house for the first time?
Oh, so here's the truth. I've grown out of my phase of collectibles.
Okay.
When I was in my 30s, I was a psychopath. Like, my house looked like the 40-year-old virgins. Like, when that movie came out, my wife was dying because she's like, that's what our apartment looks like. Like my wife could tell you every single inch of my apartment had something on it. Every single inch. And like, I just would go crazy and I would spend all my money buying that shit. And I just stopped. I just got sick of it because basically when you move, it breaks. That's it. Like, it gets dusty, and it breaks and all this stuff. And I have kids now. So as far as like a piece of content that I really love, I was going to say, like, some of my Gundams that I built and shit, but they're broken. When I moved from LA, I put them in a box. Some of them fucking broke. So that's really annoying. I have the Gypsy Danger,
right.
Sideshow collectible. So probably that, just because I had an opportunity to be a part of that. So I'd say that.
Okay. That's a pretty good one. I mean, I understand you on the space thing. I'm right on the limit of space for my figures, and I have an alien queen coming, and I don't know what I'm gonna do. I don't know where I'm.
Yeah, I'm not, and then like I'm too. I don't want to say frugal, but just to buy the good shit, like it hurts me, because I'm like, man, don't want to spend that much money on that thing, like so. So yeah, I'm still into the collectibles, but not like I used to be.
Sure. Okay, and the final question is Coke or Pepsi?
Coke. I mean,
Coke.
yeah.
No exceptions. Always
No, I
Coke in
don't.
every situation.
I think so. Yeah. Like,
Okay.
I think Pepsi's good, but like, I mean, Coke is the shit. I don't get to drink it that much anymore, and somehow I'm still fat. But like the I'm trying not to drink it ever. But yeah, when I do get a chance, I'm from New York, so like a Coke and a slice of pizza,
Yeah.
that's the way it
I
goes.
was just about to say Coke for pizza, Pepsi for sandwiches. I
I
find
don't.
I don't know why, but I like it that way.
That makes sense.
All right, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for spending this time.
Thank you.
I'm gonna run this on as a stream for viewers, and then I'll chop it down and make a video about it. A big clickbait title of Hugo Martin was in the motion capture suit for the Doomslayer. No, I won't do that. Well, Hugo, thanks a lot, and from everyone in the Doom community, goodbye and take care of yourself.
Thank you, Mayo, and thank you again for your video. It was really fantastic. And yeah, help us out with the other stuff. I need a collection of what that is, because I know that there's like a bunch of little things. So like, you get that over to Josh, and we'll get that
I'm
going.
putting it together. I'm talking to the right people. It's just gonna take a little while to figure out. Awesome.
Cool. Thanks again, bro.
Sorry, I just accidentally hit.
He was like, I don't believe you. I'm fucking out.
And that is that is the perfect way we end this thing.